The night Mara Ellison arrived at Thornwick Manor, Lady Verena made one thing clear. You are nothing here, a womb with a name attached. The words hung in the freezing dining hall like frost on iron. Darius, her husband of 6 hours, said nothing. He didn't even look up from his plate. This wasn't a marriage. It was a sentencing. And Mara? She was the newest prisoner in a household that devoured the weak and spat out the bones. But they didn't know what she was made of yet. Neither did she. If you want to see how far Mara's fight takes her, stay until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The carriage rattled over frozen ground, each jolt reminding Mara that she was farther from home than she'd ever been. The landscape outside the window was unforgiving. Bare trees clawing at a gray sky, fields of dead grass stretched thin like old scars. Thornwick Manor rose ahead, all stone and shadow, squatting at the edge of the world like something that had given up trying to be beautiful. She pressed her palm against the cold glass. Her wedding ring, thin, plain, almost apologetic, caught the dim light. "You'll adjust," her father had said that morning, his voice tight with something that wasn't quite guilt. "The Hales are an important family. This is an opportunity." An opportunity. That's what they called selling your daughter to a stranger. The carriage stopped. A servant opened the door without ceremony, no smile, no welcome. Just a curt nod toward the entrance. Mara stepped down, her traveling cloak whipping in the wind. The cold bit through the fabric immediately. The manor's front doors were already open. A woman stood framed in the doorway, tall and severe. Her posture so rigid it looked painful. Dark hair pulled back without mercy. Eyes like chips of flint. Lady Verena Hale. Mara had seen her once before at the wedding. She hadn't smiled then either. "You're late," Lady Verena said. Not a greeting. An accusation. "The roads were... I don't care about the roads. Dinner is at 7. You have 30 minutes to make yourself presentable." She turned without waiting for a response, her skirt snapping like a flag in a storm. Mara stood there, frozen in more ways than one, until a younger servant girl appeared at her elbow. "This way, miss. Mrs. Hale." The girl looked nervous. No, not nervous. Scared. That should have been the first real warning. The room they gave her was large and empty in a way that felt deliberate. High ceilings that swallowed warmth, windows that rattled, a bed that looked like it had been carved from spite. Her trunk sat in the corner, unopened, like they weren't sure she'd be staying long enough to unpack. "Is there..." Mara turned to ask the servant girl a question, but she was already gone, the door clicking shut with finality. Mara stood in the center of the room, her breath visible in the air. She'd known this wouldn't be easy. Her father had been clear about that much, at least. "The Hales are traditional," he'd said, which was rich people code for they'll make your life hell and call it character building. But she'd agreed. Because what choice did she have? Her family's debts weren't going to pay themselves, and the Ellison name wasn't worth much anymore, except as a bargaining chip in a marriage contract. So here she was, Mrs. Darius Hale, a title that felt like a costume 2 sizes too big. She splashed cold water on her face from the basin, no hot water apparently, and changed into the nicest dress she'd brought. It looked shabby in this room. Everything looked shabby here, including her. When she made her way downstairs following the sound of silverware on porcelain, she found the dining room easily enough. It was the coldest room yet, and that was saying something. The table was long enough to seat 20, but only 3 places were set. Lady Verena sat at the head like a queen holding court. To her right sat a man Mara barely recognized. Darius, her husband. He was taller than she remembered, broader in the shoulders, with dark hair that fell across his forehead like he couldn't be bothered to push it back. He wore his indifference like armor. When she entered, he glanced up for half a second, registered her existence, and went back to his soup. "Sit," Lady Verena said, gesturing to the chair at the far end of the table, miles away from everyone else. Mara sat. A servant appeared and placed a bowl in front of her. Thin soup, mostly broth. She could see the bottom of the bowl through it. Lady Verena ate with mechanical precision. Darius ate like he was alone. Neither spoke. Mara picked up her spoon. The silence was so thick she could feel it pressing against her ears. The journey was difficult, she tried, her voice sounding too loud, too eager. But the countryside is... We don't make small talk at meals, Lady Verena said without looking up. It's common. Mara's hand tightened on the spoon. Of course, I apologize. You'll apologize for many things before you learn your place here. Darius said nothing. Didn't even react. Just kept eating like his mother hadn't just verbally slapped his wife across the face. Mara stared at her soup. She could feel her cheeks burning, could feel the weight of humiliation settling into her bones. But she didn't cry. Wouldn't give them that. She ate her thin soup in silence. When the meal ended, no dessert, no coffee, just an abrupt standing up that signaled dismissal, Lady Verena finally addressed her directly. Tomorrow you'll meet with me after breakfast. I'll explain your duties. This household operates under strict principles, and you'll be expected to adhere to them without question. Do you understand? Yes? Yes, Lady Verena. Mara's jaw clenched. Yes, Lady Verena. Good. Darius will show you back to your room. Darius stood, still silent, still distant, and walked toward the door without checking if Mara was following. She was, because what else could she do? They walked through the dark hallways, their footsteps echoing. He moved fast, like he wanted this over with. She struggled to keep up in her heavy skirts. Darius, she tried, I wanted to... Your room is the third door on the left, he said without stopping, without slowing, without looking at her. Mine is at the end of the hall. I work early. Don't disturb me before 9. I just thought, good night. He kept walking, right past her room, and disappeared into the darkness at the end of the corridor. Mara stood there, alone in the hallway, staring at the door that was apparently hers, and only hers. This was her wedding night. She pressed her hand against the door frame, steadied herself, and went inside. The room was even colder than before. The next morning came too early and too dark. Someone knocked, no, pounded, on her door before the sun was even up. Mrs. Hale. Breakfast is at 6:30. Mara jolted awake, disoriented, freezing. Her breath fogged the air. She'd slept in her dress because there were no nightgowns unpacked, and no one had offered to help. She scrambled out of bed, splashed more icy water on her face, and tried to make herself look human. When she arrived at the dining room, 6:32, according to the awful clock on the mantel, Lady Verena was already seated. So was Darius. Both looked at her like she'd committed a crime. You're late. I'm sorry, I didn't... Sit. Different soup, same distance, same silence. Mara ate quickly, trying not to make noise, trying not to exist too loudly. When breakfast ended, Lady Verena stood. Follow me. She led Mara through a maze of hallways to a small, cheerless sitting room. No fire in the fireplace. Naturally. Sit. Mara sat. Lady Verena remained standing, hands folded in front of her, radiating control. Let me be clear about your position here, she began, her voice like stone grinding against stone. You were brought into this family for one reason, to provide an heir. Beyond that, you have no value. You will not interfere with how this household is run. You will not question my decisions. You will not burden my son with your feelings or complaints. You are here to be useful, not decorative. Do you understand? Mara's hands curled into fists in her lap. I understand that you expect me to... I don't expect. I demand. And if you cannot meet those demands, there are consequences. What kind of consequences? Lady Verena smiled. It was worse than her frown. The kind that make you wish you'd tried harder. She moved to the door, then paused. One more thing. You will address me as Lady Verena at all times. You will not speak unless spoken to in the presence of guests. You will take your meals when and where I tell you, and you will never embarrass this family. Because if you do, I will make certain you regret it in ways you cannot yet imagine. She left. Mara sat there, shaking. Not from cold this time, from rage. The days that followed blurred into a routine designed to break her. Wake at dawn, eat alone or under Lady Verena's silent judgment. Spend hours in cold rooms doing tasks that didn't need doing. Rearranging already organized linens, polishing silver that wasn't tarnished, copying menus by hand that could have been printed. Busy work. Humiliation disguised as duty. Darius was a ghost. She saw him at meals, sometimes in passing. He never spoke to her, never asked how she was, never acted like she was anything more than a piece of furniture. The servants were worse. They'd been trained to obey Lady Verena without question, and that meant treating Mara like she was barely there. They didn't meet her eyes, didn't answer questions. One time she asked a maid for an extra blanket. The room was unbearable at night, and the girl just stared at her, terrified, and ran off. The blanket never came. Mara started to understand. This wasn't just a cold house. It was a system. A machine built to crush anything soft that wandered into it. And she was the latest victim, but something shifted in her during those first brutal weeks. She stopped trying to be liked, stopped trying to be accepted. And she started watching. She noticed that the head housekeeper, Mrs. Guerin, ran the staff with the same iron fist Lady Verena used on everyone else. But she also noticed that Mrs. Guerin hated waste, got visibly angry when food was thrown out or supplies mismanaged. She noticed that the groundskeeper, a grizzled man named Carrick, was never invited inside, never acknowledged, but kept the entire estate from falling apart. She noticed that the young maid who'd been too scared to bring her a blanket, Bess, was clumsy, yes, but also constantly getting in trouble for things that weren't her fault. Mara noticed everything, and slowly, carefully, she started to act. It started small. She intercepted a tray of leftover bread that was about to be tossed and brought it to Mrs. Guerin with a suggestion. The staff could use it for their own meals, save costs. Mrs. Guerin looked at her like she'd sprouted a second head, but she took the bread. Mara asked Carrick a question about the gardens one morning, not because she cared about gardens, but because no one else ever asked him anything. He was suspicious at first, but he answered, and the next day she asked another question, and another. She started noticing when Bess was about to make a mistake and quietly fixing it before anyone else saw. Bess didn't thank her. She was too scared, but she stopped looking at Mara like she was the enemy. It wasn't friendship. It wasn't even alliance, not yet. But it was the beginning of something. Lady Verena noticed. Of course she did. "You've been spending time with the servants," she said one afternoon, her voice sharp as a blade. "I've been trying to understand how the household runs," Mara replied, keeping her tone even. "The household runs because I run it. You are not needed in that capacity." "I wasn't trying to—" "Don't insult my intelligence. You think you can win them over, make yourself indispensable. You can't. They are loyal to me. This house is loyal to me. You are a temporary inconvenience, and if you continue to overstep, I will remind you of that fact in ways you will not enjoy." Mara met her gaze, didn't flinch. "I'm only trying to help." "You are trying to survive," Lady Verena said coldly. "And I'm telling you, there is no surviving here on your terms, only mine." She left Mara standing there, heart pounding, hands shaking, but not from fear, from fury. Because Lady Verena was wrong about one thing. Mara wasn't trying to survive on anyone's terms. She was trying to build her own. That night, Mara did something reckless. She knocked on Darius's door. No answer. She knocked again. The door opened. Darius stood there in shirt sleeves, looking annoyed. "What?" "I need to talk to you." "It's late." "I know, but I need to talk to you." He sighed like she'd asked him to move a mountain. "Fine. Make it quick." She stepped inside. His room was warmer than hers, of course it was, and actually looked lived in. Books on the desk, paper scattered, a fire in the fireplace. He leaned against the desk, arms crossed, waiting. "Your mother is making it impossible for me to function in this house," Mara said, her voice steadier than she felt. "My mother runs this house. You'll adjust." "I've been here for 3 weeks, Darius. I've adjusted." "But she's not interested in me adjusting. She's interested in breaking me." "That's dramatic." "Is it?" "She monitors what I eat. She assigns me pointless tasks. She's turned the entire staff against me. I'm isolated, humiliated, and ignored. By her, and by you." Something flickered across his face. Irritation, maybe. Or guilt. Hard to tell. "I have responsibilities," he said. "I don't have time to—" "To what? Acknowledge that you have a wife? To act like this is a marriage and not a transaction?" "It is a transaction," he said flatly. "That's what this is. You knew that when you agreed." "I knew it wouldn't be a love match. I didn't know I'd be treated like a prisoner." "You're not a prisoner. You're free to—" "To what? Leave? Go where? With what money? What support?" She laughed, bitter. "You know I can't leave. And your mother knows it too. That's why she's doing this." Darius looked away. Uncomfortable now. Good. What do you want from me? He asked. I want you to acknowledge that I exist. I want you to stop letting your mother treat me like dirt. I want... She stopped, swallowed hard. I want you to be my husband, not in some grand romantic way, just in a way that doesn't make me feel like I'm completely alone. Silence. He stared at the floor. She waited. Finally, he spoke. I'll talk to her. Will you? I said I would. Mara didn't believe him, but she nodded anyway. Thank you. She turned to leave. Mara. She stopped, surprised. He almost never said her name. It's not personal, he said quietly. The way I am. It's just easier this way. Easier for who? He didn't answer. She left. Darius did not talk to his mother. Mara knew because things got worse. Her meals were reduced further, smaller portions, served later, sometimes cold. Her tasks became even more pointless. She was sent to inventory a storage room that hadn't been used in years, surrounded by dust and mouse droppings, for 8 hours straight. When she asked for help with something, she was ignored. When she tried to sit in the main sitting room one evening, Lady Verena informed her that room was for family. I am family, Mara said. No, Lady Verena replied. You are a woman who married into this family. There's a difference. Mara felt something crack inside her, but instead of shattering, it hardened. She spent the next 2 weeks working quietly, methodically. She kept helping where she could, fixing problems before they became disasters, making small suggestions that saved time or money. She didn't ask for credit, didn't make a show of it, but people noticed. Mrs. Guerin started giving her small nods of acknowledgement. Carrick actually smiled once, a brief startling thing, but real. Bess stopped flinching when Mara entered a room. It wasn't much, but it was something. And then one morning, everything shifted. A guest was coming, someone important. Lady Verena was in a frenzy, barking orders, demanding perfection. The house was scrubbed top to bottom. The staff worked themselves ragged. Mara stayed out of the way, but she watched. The guest arrived in the afternoon, Lord Ashford, an old friend of the family, pompous and loud. Lady Verena was all charm and grace with him, a performance Mara had never seen her give before. Dinner that night was formal. Mara was allowed to attend, couldn't very well hide the new bride after all. She wore her best dress, sat in her usual spot at the far end, kept quiet. Lord Ashford talked endlessly about politics, land disputes, the weather. Darius responded in monosyllables. Lady Verena orchestrated the conversation like a conductor. And then Lord Ashford turned to Mara. And you, my dear, how are you finding life at Thornwick? Quite an adjustment, I imagine. Mara felt every eye on her. Lady Verena's gaze was sharp. Darius looked wary. She smiled, polite, practiced. It's been an education, Lord Ashford. He laughed. I'm sure Verena runs a tight ship, doesn't she? She certainly does. Well, you're lucky to have her guidance. A young bride needs structure, discipline. Isn't that right, Verena? Absolutely, Lady Verena said smoothly. Structure is everything. Lord Ashford raised his glass. To structure, then, and to the Hale family, strong as ever. They drank. Mara sipped her wine and said nothing more. But inside, she was screaming. That night, after Lord Ashford had gone to bed and the house had fallen silent, Mara found herself in the library, a room she'd discovered by accident, small and tucked away, full of old books no one read. She sat in the dark, staring at nothing. The door opened. She didn't turn around. You handled that well, Darius. She didn't respond. He came closer, stopped a few feet away. My mother was impressed. She won't say it, but she was. Good for her. Mara, don't. She finally looked at him. Don't pretend you care now. Don't pretend any of this matters to you. It does matter. Then why don't you do anything? Why do you just let her? Because it's easier, he snapped, his composure cracking for the first time. Because fighting her is exhausting and pointless, and I learned a long time ago that it's better to just let her win. Let her win, Mara repeated, even if it destroys me? He looked away. You're stronger than you think. I shouldn't have to be. Silence. Then, quietly, I know. He left her there. Mara sat in the dark library until the cold drove her back to her room. She climbed into bed, still dressed, and stared at the ceiling. Something had to change. She couldn't keep doing this. She wouldn't. But she didn't know what came next. Not yet. Outside, the wind howled against the windows. Thornwick Manor, cold and unyielding, pressed down on her like a weight she couldn't shake. But Mara was still standing, and that, for now, was enough. The morning after Lord Ashford left, Mara woke to find her breakfast tray hadn't arrived. She waited. 8 o'clock came and went. 9. Nothing. She dressed herself, another thing she'd learned to do without help, and went downstairs. The dining room was empty, cold ashes in the fireplace, no place set for her. She found Mrs. Guerin in the kitchen, overseeing the staff's preparation for lunch. "Mrs. Guerin, I didn't receive breakfast this morning." The housekeeper barely looked up from the inventory sheet she was marking. "Lady Verena said you'd be fasting today." "Fasting? Why?" "Didn't say. I don't question her orders." Mara's stomach twisted. "I see." She turned to leave, but something made her stop. She looked back at the kitchen, at the loaves of bread cooling on the counter, the pot of porridge still warm on the stove. "Mrs. Guerin," she said carefully, "that porridge. You're going to throw it out, aren't you? There's too much for the staff." The housekeeper frowned. "Usually do. Why?" "The stable hands. They start work before dawn. They'd appreciate something warm, wouldn't they?" Mrs. Guerin's eyes narrowed. "You trying to get around Lady Verena's orders?" "No, I'm trying to keep you from wasting food you worked hard to make." A long silence. Then Mrs. Guerin nodded once, sharp. "Bess, take the porridge out to Carrick. Tell him to share it with the stable boys before it goes cold." Bess jumped, startled at being addressed. "Yes, ma'am." Mara left before Mrs. Guerin could change her mind. Her stomach growled all morning, but she didn't complain, didn't go back to the kitchen, didn't ask Darius for help. By noon, she was lightheaded. By dinner, she was shaking. Lady Verena watched her across the table with cold satisfaction. "You look pale, dear." "I'm fine." "Are you? You've barely touched your food." Mara glanced down at her plate. The same thin soup, a piece of bread that could fit in her palm. "I'm not very hungry." "How strange. Most young women your age have such hearty appetites." Lady Verena dabbed her mouth with a napkin. "Perhaps you're coming down with something. I do hope you're not getting sick. Illness is such a burden on a household." Darius said nothing, ate his roasted chicken, pretended this wasn't happening. Mara picked up her spoon, finished her soup, ate her bread slowly, making it last. When the meal ended, she stood without waiting to be dismissed and walked out. She heard Lady Verena's voice behind her, calm and poisonous. "She'll learn." That night, Mara lay in bed, too hungry to sleep, too angry to cry. She stared at the ceiling and made a decision. She wasn't going to beg anymore. Wasn't going to explain herself or defend herself or try to win approval from people who would never give it. She was going to stop playing their game entirely. The next morning, she didn't wait for breakfast. She woke early, dressed, and went straight to the kitchen before the household stirred. Mrs. Guerin was already there, starting preparations. "I'd like to help," Mara said. Mrs. Guerin looked up, suspicious. "With what?" "Whatever needs doing. I'm awake. I'm here. Put me to work." "Lady Verena won't like that." "Lady Verena doesn't need to know." Mrs. Guerin studied her for a long moment. Then she pointed to a basket of vegetables. "Those need washing and cutting. Don't make a mess." Mara rolled up her sleeves and got to work. She didn't know what she was doing. She'd never prepared food in her life, but she watched the other kitchen maids and copied them. Her cuts were uneven. Her hands got sore. But she kept going. An hour later, Mrs. Guerin inspected her work, said nothing, handed her another task. By the time the household woke up, Mara had been working for 3 hours. Her back ached, her fingers were raw, and she felt more alive than she had in weeks. When breakfast was served, she took her place at the table. Lady Verena looked at her like she was trying to solve a puzzle. "You're in a better mood this morning." "Am I?" "You're smiling." Mara hadn't realized she was. She stopped. Lady Verena's eyes narrowed. "What have you been doing?" "Nothing. I woke early, took a walk." "A walk? In this cold?" "I don't mind the cold." It was a lie. She hated the cold. But she wasn't going to give Lady Verena the satisfaction of knowing she'd gotten under her skin. Darius glanced up briefly, something like curiosity flickering across his face. Then it was gone. The meal continued in silence, but something had shifted. Lady Verena felt it too. Mara could tell by the way she watched her now, not with smugness, but with calculation. Like she was trying to figure out what had changed. Over the next week, Mara kept going to the kitchen, every morning before anyone could stop her. Mrs. Guerin didn't praise her, didn't thank her, but she stopped questioning why Mara was there. And slowly, imperceptibly, the other staff started treating her differently. Not with warmth, not yet, but with something closer to respect. Bess started leaving small things for her. A cup of tea on a windowsill, an extra blanket folded at the foot of her bed. Nothing overt, nothing that could be traced back. Just gestures. Carrick tipped his hat to her one morning when she passed him in the courtyard. Even the cook, a surly woman named Patrice, who'd never spoken to her before, grunted in acknowledgement when Mara handed her a bowl of peeled potatoes. It wasn't much, but it was a foothold, and Mara intended to climb. Lady Verena noticed. Of course she did. One afternoon, she cornered Mara in the hallway outside the library. "You've been spending a great deal of time with the staff." "I've been helping where I can." "You've been undermining me." Mara met her gaze. "How is helping undermining you?" "Don't play innocent. You're trying to turn them against me. Make yourself indispensable so I can't get rid of you." "I'm trying to be useful. Isn't that what you wanted?" Lady Verena stepped closer. Her voice dropped, venomous. "Let me be very clear. You can make as many little friends as you like. You can wash vegetables and fold linens and play the martyr all day long. But at the end of the day, I control this house. I control the money. I control your husband. And I control you. So whatever pathetic little rebellion you think you're staging, it ends now." Or what? The words came out before Mara could stop them. Bold, reckless. Lady Verena's smile was razor sharp. "Or I'll remind you just how powerless you really are." She walked away, her footsteps echoing. Mara stood there, heart pounding, waiting for the fear to hit. It didn't. Instead, she felt something else. Defiance. That night, Mara didn't go to her room. She went to Darius's study. She didn't knock, just opened the door and walked in. He looked up from his desk, startled. "What are you—" "Your mother threatened me today." He sighed, put down his pen. "Mara. She said she controls you, that she controls me, that I'm powerless here. She was trying to scare you. She succeeded, but not in the way she wanted." Darius frowned. "What does that mean?" Mara crossed the room, stopped in front of his desk. "It means I'm done pretending this is tolerable. I'm done waiting for you to stand up for me. I'm done hoping things will get better on their own. So what are you going to do?" "I'm going to stop asking permission." "For what?" "For everything. I'm going to stop waiting for approval. Stop trying to fit into whatever mold your mother thinks I should fill. I'm going to run this household the way it should be run. Efficiently, fairly, without cruelty. And if she doesn't like it, she can try to stop me." Darius stared at her. "That's suicide." "Maybe. Or maybe it's the only way I survive. You're going to make things worse for yourself. They're already as bad as they can get." "No," he said quietly. "They're not. And if you push her like this, you'll find out exactly how much worse they can be." Mara leaned forward, hands on the desk. "Then why don't you stop her? You're her son. You have power here. Why don't you use it?" "Because—" He stopped, looked away. "Because it's not that simple." "It is that simple. You just don't want to deal with the consequences. You don't understand, then explain it to me." He didn't, just sat there, jaw tight, staring at the papers on his desk like they held answers. Mara straightened. "I thought so." She turned to leave. "Mara." She paused at the door but didn't turn around. "Be careful," he said. "Please." She didn't respond. The next morning, Mara did something she'd been planning for days. She went to the estate's account ledger. Lady Verena kept it in a locked drawer in her sitting room. Mara had seen her put it away once, watched where she hid the key, a small brass thing tucked behind a hideous porcelain figurine on the mantel. It was risky. If she got caught, there'd be hell to pay. But Mara was past caring. She waited until Lady Verena went out, some luncheon with neighbors that would keep her gone for hours, then slipped into the sitting room. Her hands shook as she retrieved the key, unlocked the drawer, pulled out the ledger. It was heavier than she expected, bound in leather, pages yellowed with age. She sat at the desk and started reading. What she found made her stomach drop. The household was hemorrhaging money. Costs were astronomical, unnecessary expenses for things that didn't need replacing. Inflated prices paid to vendors who were clearly overcharging. Waste everywhere. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that Lady Verena knew. She'd signed off on every single transaction. She was either incompetent or deliberately driving the estate into debt. Mara kept reading, her mind racing. There were payments to a name she didn't recognize. Edmund Cross. Large sums, regular intervals, no explanation. She flipped back through months of entries. The payments went back years. Who was Edmund Cross? Footsteps in the hallway. Mara's heart stopped. She slammed the ledger shut, shoved it back in the drawer, locked it, replaced the key. The door opened. Darius stood there, looking confused. What are you doing in here? Nothing. I was looking for a book. In my mother's sitting room? I got turned around. He didn't believe her. She could see it in his eyes. But he didn't push, just stepped aside. She'll be back soon. You should go. Mara hurried past him, her pulse hammering. She'd almost been caught. But she'd seen enough. The estate was in trouble. Real trouble. And Lady Verena was hiding it. That evening at dinner, Mara couldn't stop thinking about the ledger. About Edmund Cross. About the money disappearing into a black hole while the staff went underpaid and the house fell into disrepair. She picked at her food, barely tasting it. Lady Verena watched her with that cold, calculating gaze. You're quiet tonight. Just tired. Tired from what? You've been doing nothing but meddling in the kitchen. I've been helping. You've been distracting my staff from their duties. Your staff works harder because of me, not despite me. Lady Verena's fork paused halfway to her mouth. Excuse me? Mara looked up, met her gaze. They're overworked and underpaid. They're exhausted, and you treat them like they're disposable. So yes, I've been helping them, because someone should. Darius went very still. Lady Verena set down her fork slowly, deliberately. You have no idea what you're talking about. Don't I? I've seen the way this house runs. I've seen the waste, the inefficiency, the cruelty. Cruelty? Yes. Cruelty. You run this house like a dictator, and everyone in it is afraid of you. The room went silent. Lady Verena stood, her face pale with fury. How dare you? How dare I what? Tell the truth? You are a guest in this house. I'm not a guest. I'm your son's wife. That makes me family whether you like it or not. You are nothing, Lady Verena hissed. You have no authority here, no power, no say in how anything is done. And if you continue to speak to me this way, I will have you removed from this house entirely. On what grounds? I don't need grounds. I own this estate. Actually, Mara said, her voice shaking but steady, you don't. Your son does. Lady Verena's eyes blazed. Darius would never. Wouldn't he? Everyone turned to Darius. He sat frozen, fork still in hand, looking like he wanted to disappear. Darius, Lady Verena said, her voice dangerously soft. Tell her. He didn't speak. Darius? Tell her that she has no place here, that she will obey my rules or leave. The silence stretched. Finally, Darius set down his fork. Mother. Tell her. He looked at Mara, then at his mother, then down at his plate. I think, he said slowly, we should all calm down. Lady Verena's face went white. You're taking her side? I'm not taking anyone's side. I'm saying, you're weak, she spat. Just like your father. Darius flinched like he'd been slapped. Lady Verena turned back to Mara, her voice shaking with rage. You will regret this. I promise you that. She left the room, her exit sharp and final. Mara sat there, shaking. Darius stared at his plate, jaw clenched. You shouldn't have done that, he said quietly. Someone had to. No. You don't understand. You just made everything so much worse. It was already worse. He stood abruptly, threw his napkin on the table. You have no idea what you've started. He left. Mara sat alone in the cold dining room, surrounded by half-eaten food and silence. Her hands were trembling, her chest felt tight, but she didn't regret it, not even a little. The next 3 days were brutal. Lady Verena stopped speaking to her entirely, which should have been a relief, but it wasn't, because the silence was somehow worse than the cruelty. It was a cold, deliberate erasure. The staff stopped acknowledging her again. Orders came down from Lady Verena. No one was to assist Mrs. Hale with anything, no meals delivered, no help with dressing, no fires lit in her room. Mara was effectively cut off. She ate in the kitchen when no one was looking, stole bread and cheese when she could, wore the same dress for 3 days because she couldn't manage the buttons on the others alone, froze at night because there was no firewood and no one would bring her any. It was punishment. Calculated, precise, designed to break her. But Mara refused to break. She kept showing up, kept working, kept helping where she could, even when people ignored her. And slowly, cracks started to form. Bess left a small pile of firewood outside Mara's door one night. Didn't say a word about it, just left it there. Carrick nodded at her in the courtyard and muttered, "Rough few days, eh?" Mrs. Guerin handed her a bowl of stew in the kitchen and said, "Eat. You look like death." It wasn't much, but it was proof that Lady Verena didn't control everything. Not yet. On the 4th day, Mara was in the garden, freezing, exhausted, trying to clear her head, when she heard voices from an open window above. Lady Verena's sitting room. She shouldn't have stopped, shouldn't have listened, but she did. "Can't let this continue, Edmund. She's becoming a problem." A man's voice, low and smooth. "Then get rid of her." "It's not that simple. Darius is soft. He won't agree to an annulment." "Then make him agree." "How?" A pause. Then, "The usual way. Fear, shame, debt. I've tried. She's more stubborn than I anticipated." "Everyone breaks eventually, Verena. You just have to find the right pressure point." Mara's blood ran cold. Edmund Cross, he wasn't a vendor. He wasn't a business associate. He was something else entirely, and whatever hold he had over Lady Verena, it was dangerous. Mara backed away from the window, her heart pounding. She needed to tell someone, Darius, and anyone, but who would believe her? That night, she tried to talk to Darius again. He was in his study, door closed. She knocked. "Go away." "Darius, please, I need to talk to you." "No. It's important." "I don't care." She pressed her forehead against the door. "Your mother is in trouble, real trouble, and I think you are too." A long silence. Then the door opened. Darius stood there, looking exhausted. "What are you talking about?" "I overheard her today, talking to a man named Edmund Cross." "Do you know who that is?" His face went carefully blank. No. He was lying, she could tell. "Darius, stop. Whatever you think you heard, you're wrong." "I'm not wrong. She's hiding something, and it's bad. My mother is difficult, but she's not what? Evil? Because from where I'm standing, she's doing a pretty good impression." "You need to stop this," he said, his voice tight. "Stop digging. Stop pushing, before you get hurt." "I'm already hurt. It can get worse." "Then help me." He looked at her for a long moment. Something flickered in his eyes. Regret, maybe. Or fear. "I can't," he said softly. He closed the door. Mara stood there, alone in the hallway, fists clenched. She was on her own. Completely, utterly on her own. But she wasn't going to stop. The next morning, she went back to Lady Verena's sitting room. This time, she wasn't looking for the ledger. She was looking for letters. And she found them. Tucked in a drawer beneath old correspondence. Letters from Edmund Cross going back years. They were vague, coded, but the implication was clear. He was blackmailing her. Something about Darius's father. Something that happened before he died. Mara's hands shook as she read. She didn't understand all of it, but she understood enough. Lady Verena had a secret. A big one. And Edmund Cross was bleeding her dry because of it. Mara carefully returned the letters, locked the drawer, replaced the key. She left the room feeling like she'd just swallowed glass. Whatever this was, it was bigger than her, bigger than a cruel mother-in-law in a hostile household. This was dangerous, and she had no idea what to do with it. That night, she couldn't sleep. Her mind raced. She paced her cold room, trying to think, trying to plan. A soft knock at the door made her jump. She opened it. Bess stood there, pale and trembling. Mrs. Hale, you need to leave." "What?" "Tonight, now. Lady Verena, she's planning something. I heard her talking to Mr. Cross. They're going to—" She swallowed hard. "They're going to make you disappear." Mara's blood turned to ice. "What do you mean, disappear?" "I don't know exactly, but it's bad. Really bad. You have to go." "Where would I go?" "Anywhere, just not here." Mara stared at her, this girl terrified and small, risking everything to warn her. "Why are you helping me?" Bess's eyes filled with tears. "Because nobody helped me when I needed it, and I can't watch it happen again." Mara's throat tightened. "Thank you," she whispered. Bess nodded once, then vanished down the hallway. Mara stood in her doorway, mind racing. She could run, pack a bag, disappear into the night, but where would that leave her? Penniless, homeless, at the mercy of a world that didn't care. Or she could stay and fight. The choice was terrifying, but somewhere deep inside, Mara already knew what she was going to do. She closed the door, locked it, and dragged a chair in front of it. Then she sat by the window and waited for dawn. If Lady Verena wanted a war, she'd get one. Dawn came gray and cold, the kind of morning that felt like a threat. Mara hadn't slept. She'd sat by the window all night, watching the darkness thin into pale light, her mind churning through every possible outcome of what she was about to do. By the time she heard movement in the hallway, servants starting their rounds, the house waking, she'd made peace with her decision. She wasn't running, she was done running. She washed her face in cold water, pinned her hair back with trembling fingers, and put on the plainest dress she owned. No jewelry, no pretense, just herself. When she stepped into the hallway, she nearly collided with Mrs. Guerin. The housekeeper took one look at her and frowned. "You look terrible." "I didn't sleep." "You're going to get yourself killed, girl." Mara blinked. "What?" Mrs. Guerin glanced down the hallway, lowered her voice. "I don't know what you're planning, but whatever it is, don't. Lady Verena's in a mood, worse than usual. Just keep your head down today." "I can't do that." "Then you're a fool." "Probably." Mrs. Guerin stared at her, something almost like concern flickering across her weathered face. Then she shook her head. "Stubborn as a mule, just like—" She stopped herself. "Never mind. Do what you want, but don't say I didn't warn you." She walked away, muttering under her breath. Mara went downstairs. The dining room was empty. No breakfast laid out. No place settings. She stood there for a moment, uncertain, then headed toward the kitchen. Before she reached it, a voice stopped her cold. "Going somewhere?" Lady Verena stood at the end of the hallway, perfectly composed, perfectly cold. She looked like she'd slept beautifully, like she didn't have a care in the world. "I was looking for breakfast," Mara said. "Breakfast is canceled." "Canceled? For you. The rest of the household will eat as usual." Mara's jaw tightened. "Why?" "Because I said so." Lady Verena stepped closer, her heels clicking on the stone floor. "You've been quite the disruption lately. I think a day of reflection might do you good." "Reflection on what?" "On your place, your purpose, your complete and utter lack of importance in this house." Mara felt her pulse quicken, but she kept her voice steady. "Is Edmund Cross coming today?" Lady Verena went very still. The silence stretched, sharp and dangerous. "What did you say?" "Edmund Cross. I was wondering if he'd be visiting. You two seem to have a lot to discuss." Lady Verena's face remained perfectly blank, but something flickered in her eyes. Shock, then fury, then calculation. "You've been going through my things. I've been paying attention. You little—" Lady Verena caught herself, smoothed her expression back into icy control. "You have no idea what you're meddling in." "Then explain it to me." "I don't owe you explanations." "No, but you owe Darius the truth." Lady Verena laughed, a cold, brittle sound. "The truth? You want to talk about truth? You're a nobody from a bankrupt family who got lucky enough to marry into mine. You have no power here, no leverage. no friends, and yet you stand there acting like you have any right to question me. I have every right. I'm part of this family now. You're a transaction, a womb with paperwork attached, nothing more. Mara took a step forward. If I'm nothing, why are you so afraid of me? Lady Verena's eyes blazed. I am not afraid of you. Then prove it. Tell Darius about Edmund Cross. Tell him what you've been hiding. Or what? You'll tell him yourself. Lady Verena smiled, cruel and confident. Go ahead. See how far that gets you. He won't believe you. He never does. Maybe, but I'm willing to try. You really are stupid, aren't you? Lady Verena moved closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. You think you can expose me? Ruin me? I've been running this estate for 30 years. I've survived worse than you, and if you try to come after me, I will destroy you in ways you can't imagine. You've already tried to destroy me. It didn't work. Lady Verena's smile vanished. Then I'll try harder. She walked away, leaving Mara standing alone in the hallway, heart hammering against her ribs. She'd drawn a line. There was no going back now. Mara spent the morning in her room, pacing, trying to think. She needed proof, something concrete she could show Darius, something he couldn't dismiss or ignore. The letters were vague. The ledger was damning, but could be explained away as poor management. She needed more. A knock at the door made her jump. Who is it? Carrick. She opened the door. The groundskeeper stood there, cap in hand, looking uncomfortable. Mr. Carrick? Need a word if you've got a minute. She stepped aside and he came in, glancing around like he expected someone to jump out of the shadows. What's wrong? Heard you asking about Edmund Cross. Mara's breath caught. You know him? Known of him. He's bad news, Mrs. Hale. Real bad. Tell me. Carrick hesitated, then sighed. He was involved with the old master, Mr. Hale, Darius's father, some kind of business deal that went south. When the master died, Cross started coming around, talking to Lady Verena. Been bleeding her dry ever since. Why doesn't she just cut him off? Can't. He's got something on her, or on the family. I don't know what exactly, but it's enough to keep her paying. How do you know all this? I keep my ears open, and I was here when the master died. Heard things I probably shouldn't have. Mara's mind raced. What kind of things? Carrick looked away, uncomfortable. There was talk about how he died. It was sudden, see? Healthy one day, gone the next. Official story was heart failure. But there were whispers. Whispers about what? About it not being natural. Mara felt her stomach drop. You think he was killed? I think it's possible, and I think Cross knows something about it. That's why Lady Verena can't get rid of him. Does Darius know? If he does, he's never said, but I doubt it. Lady Verena keeps him in the dark about most things. Mara sat down heavily on the bed. This was worse than she thought. So much worse. Why are you telling me this? Carrick met her eyes. Because you're the first person in this house who's tried to do something about it. And because if someone doesn't stop her, this whole place is going to fall apart. The staff knows it. We see the money running out, the repairs not getting done, the cuts to our wages. It's only a matter of time before it all collapses. And you think I can stop it? I think you're willing to try. That's more than anyone else has done. He stood, put his cap back on. Be careful, Mrs. Hale. Lady Verena doesn't play fair, and neither does Cross. He left. Mara sat there, staring at the wall, feeling the weight of what she'd just learned settling over her like a shroud. If Carrick was right, if Darius's father had been killed and Lady Verena was covering it up, then this wasn't just about money or control. This was murder. That afternoon, Mara found Darius in the stables. He was brushing down his horse, methodical and focused, clearly trying to avoid the house. Darius. He didn't look up. What? I need to talk to you. It's important. Everything's important to you lately. This is different. He kept brushing. I'm busy. Your father. How did he die? Darius's hand stilled. Slowly he looked up at her. What? Your father. You said it was heart failure. Are you sure? His face went hard. Don't. Darius, I said don't. He threw the brush down, stepped away from the horse. What are you trying to do? What's the point of this? The point is that your mother is hiding something. Something big. And I think it has to do with how your father died. My father had a weak heart. The doctors confirmed it. What if they were wrong? They weren't. How do you know? Because I was there. His voice cracked, raw and sudden. I was there when he collapsed. I watched him die. And there was nothing anyone could have done. Mara softened. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. Yes, you did. You meant to dig up the worst day of my life because you're on some crusade against my mother. He turned away, jaw clenched. You need to stop. You're going to get hurt. I'm already hurt. Then you're going to get killed. The words hung in the air, sharp and cold. Mara stepped closer. Is that a threat? It's a warning. From someone who actually cares whether you survive this. If you care, then help me. I can't. You won't. He spun around, grabbed her by the shoulders. Not rough, but firm, desperate. Listen to me. My mother is dangerous. Edmund Cross is worse. If you go after them, they will destroy you, and I can't. He stopped, his grip loosening. I can't watch that happen. Then stop them. I can't. Why not? Because he let go of her, stepped back, ran a hand through his hair. Because I'm a coward, Mara. Is that what you want to hear? I'm weak and afraid, and I've spent my whole life doing exactly what she tells me to do because it's easier than fighting her. And now you're here, trying to be brave, and all I can think is that you're going to get yourself killed, and it'll be my fault for not stopping you. Mara stared at him. She'd never heard him talk like this, so raw, so honest. It won't be your fault, she said quietly. This is my choice. It's a stupid choice. Maybe, but it's mine. He looked at her for a long moment, something shifting in his expression. Resignation, maybe, or acceptance. If I can't stop you, he said slowly, then at least let me help. You mean that? I don't know. Maybe. Probably not, but he exhaled hard. I'm tired, Mara. I'm so tired of pretending everything's fine when it's not. So if you're really going to do this, if you're really going to take her on, then I'd rather be on your side than hers, even if it's a losing fight. Something in Mara's chest unclenched. She wasn't alone anymore. Thank you. He shook his head. Don't thank me yet. I'm probably going to regret this. That evening, Lady Verena announced there would be a dinner party. 3 days from now, important guests from the surrounding estates. A chance to show off the family's strength, stability, unity, a performance. Mara understood immediately. This was Lady Verena's counterstrike. She was going to parade Mara in front of their neighbors, show everyone how well-trained and obedient the new bride was. Reinforce her control. You'll wear the blue dress, Lady Verena said, not asking, commanding. And you'll be charming and quiet and everything a proper wife should be. And if I'm not? Lady Verena's smile was ice. Then I'll make sure everyone in attendance knows exactly what kind of person you are. Unstable, ungrateful, unfit. By the end of the night, your reputation will be in tatters, and no one will ever take your word over mine again. You'd lie to them? I'll tell them the truth, that you've been causing trouble, undermining me, making wild accusations. They'll believe me. They always do. Mara felt the trap closing around her. If she behaved, she lost. If she didn't, she lost worse. But there was a third option. She could flip the board entirely. I'll be there, Mara said, and I'll wear the blue dress. Lady Verena looked surprised, suspicious, but she nodded. Good. Perhaps you're finally learning. She left. Darius, who'd been standing in the doorway, stepped into the room. What are you planning? I'm planning to give her exactly what she wants. That doesn't sound like you. It's not. Mara, trust me. He looked at her, worried, but he nodded. The next 3 days were a blur of preparation. Lady Verena was in her element, barking orders, arranging flowers, inspecting every detail. The house was scrubbed top to bottom. The best china was brought out. Meat was ordered from town, an expense the estate couldn't afford, but appearances mattered more than solvency. Mara played along, smiled when expected, nodded when spoken to, wore the blue dress for a fitting without complaint. But behind the scenes, she was gathering ammunition. She copied sections of the ledger when no one was looking. She found more letters from Edmund Cross, carefully slipped them out of their envelopes, and made notes. She talked to Carrick, to Mrs. Guerin, to Bess. Quietly, carefully, building a picture of exactly how bad things had gotten. By the night of the party, she had everything she needed. The guests arrived at 7. Lords and ladies from neighboring estates, dressed in finery that made Thornwick's shabby grandeur even more obvious by comparison. They filled the drawing room with chatter and laughter, oblivious to the rot beneath the surface. Mara stood beside Darius, playing her part. The smiling bride, the dutiful wife. Lady Verena worked the room like a conductor, charming and gracious and completely in control. Dinner was served. Roasted pheasant, potatoes, wine that cost more than a month of staff wages. Conversation flowed. Politics, gossip, land prices. Mara ate in silence, waiting. Halfway through the meal, Lord Ashford, the same pompous fool from weeks ago, raised his glass. "A toast," he announced, "to the Hale family, strong as ever, despite the challenges of recent years." Everyone drank, polite murmurs of agreement. Mara set down her glass. "What challenges?" The table went quiet. All eyes turned to her. Lord Ashford blinked. "I beg your pardon?" "You said recent challenges. I was curious what you meant." Lady Verena's smile didn't waver, but her eyes were sharp. Lord Ashford was simply referring to the changing times, nothing specific. "Oh, I thought perhaps you meant the financial difficulties." The room went very still. "Mara," Darius said quietly. A warning. She ignored him, looked directly at Lady Verena. "We are having financial difficulties, aren't we? The estate is running at a loss. Has been for years." Lady Verena's composure cracked just slightly. "That is not— I've seen the ledger. The expenses are out of control. The debts are mounting. And there are regular payments to someone named Edmund Cross that no one can explain." Gasps around the table, shocked whispers. Lady Verena stood, her face pale with fury. "How dare you? How dare I what?" "Tell the truth?" Mara stood as well, her hands shaking but her voice steady. "You've been hiding this from everyone. From your son, from the staff, from these people who think you're running a thriving estate when really you're drowning. You don't know what you're talking about." "Don't I?" "Then explain Edmund Cross." "He's a business associate. He's a blackmailer." The room erupted, guests talking over each other, shocked and scandalized. "Enough!" Lady Verena's voice cut through the chaos like a whip. She turned to the guests, forced a smile. "Please forgive my daughter-in-law. She's been unwell lately. Stress, I think. The adjustment to married life has been difficult for her." Murmurs of sympathy, nods of understanding. Mara felt the narrative slipping away from her. "I'm not unwell," she said loudly. "I'm telling you the truth. This family is in trouble, real trouble, and she's been lying to all of you about it." "Darius," Lady Verena said, her voice icy. "Control your wife." Everyone looked at Darius. He sat frozen, caught between his mother and Mara, looking like he wanted to disappear. "Darius," Lady Verena repeated. "Tell them she's lying." He opened his mouth, closed it. "Tell them." The silence was unbearable. Finally, Darius stood, slowly, heavily. "She's not lying." The room exploded. Lady Verena's face went white. "What did you say?" "She's not lying." Darius's voice was quiet but firm. "The estate is in debt. I've known for months, and I've been too afraid to do anything about it." "You—" Lady Verena couldn't seem to form words. "You're taking her side?" "I'm telling the truth. For once. After everything I've done for you." "Everything you've done for me?" Darius's voice rose. "You've controlled me, manipulated me, kept me in the dark about things I had a right to know. And I let you because it was easier than fighting, but I'm done." Lady Verena stared at him like he was a stranger. Then she turned to Mara, her expression pure venom. "This is your fault. You poisoned him against me." "I told him the truth." "You destroyed this family." "No, you did that all by yourself." Lady Verena's hand shot out, not to slap, but to grab Mara's wrist, tight and painful. "You think you've won? You've won nothing. I will make you pay for this. I will make both of you pay." "Let go of her." Darius's voice was hard. "Or what?" "Let go of her, mother." For a moment, Lady Verena held on. Then slowly she released Mara's wrist. She looked around the room, at the shocked guests, the scandalized faces, the ruined evening. "This dinner is over," she said coldly. "All of you, leave." No one moved. "I said leave!" Slowly, awkwardly, the guests began to stand, gathering coats, murmuring apologies, filing out into the cold night. Within minutes, the room was empty except for Mara, Darius, and Lady Verena. Lady Verena stood perfectly still, staring at nothing. Then she laughed, low and bitter. "You have no idea what you've done," she said softly. "No idea at all." She walked out. Mara stood there, shaking. Darius came to her side, touched her arm gently. "Are you all right?" "I don't know. That was—" He stopped. "I don't even know what that was." "It was the truth. It was a bomb." Mara looked up at him. "Did you mean it? What you said?" "I don't know. Maybe. Probably." He rubbed his face, exhausted. "I just know I couldn't sit there and let her call you a liar. Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. She's not going to let this go." "I know." They stood there in the ruined dining room, the candles burning low, the silence heavy and uncertain. Outside, a carriage clattered away into the night, and somewhere in the house, Lady Verena was planning her revenge. Mara didn't see Lady Verena for 2 days after the dinner. The woman had locked herself in her private quarters, refusing meals, refusing visitors, refusing to acknowledge that anything had happened at all. But her absence was louder than her presence had ever been. The staff felt it immediately. They moved through the house with a kind of cautious hope, like prisoners testing the walls of their cell and finding them weaker than expected. Conversations happened in normal voices instead of whispers. Mrs. Guerin stopped barking orders and started asking questions. Even Patrice, the perpetually sour cook, hummed while she worked. Mara spent those 2 days trying to hold everything together. Someone had to. Bills needed paying, or at least organizing. Repairs that had been ignored for months needed addressing. The staff needed reassurance that they weren't about to lose their positions. She worked from dawn until well past dark, fueled by nervous energy and the terrifying realization that she'd broken something she wasn't sure how to fix. Darius helped where he could, which surprised her. He wasn't good at it, spent most of his time looking uncomfortable and asking questions he should have known the answers to, but he tried. That counted for something. On the third morning, Mara was in the study, surrounded by papers and ledgers, when Mrs. Guerin knocked on the door. "Mrs. Hale? Someone's here to see you." "Who?" "Says his name is Edmund Cross." Mara's blood went cold. "Where is he?" "Drawing room. Should I tell him you're not available?" "No." Mara stood, smoothed her skirt with hands that wanted to shake. "I'll see him." Mrs. Guerin looked worried. "Are you sure? That man's trouble." "I know, but I can't avoid him forever." She walked to the drawing room feeling like she was headed to an execution. Her own or someone else's, she wasn't sure yet. Edmund Cross stood by the window, looking out at the dead gardens. He was tall, well-dressed, with silver hair and the kind of face that probably passed for distinguished in certain circles. But there was something off about him, something cold. He turned when she entered, smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "Mrs. Hale, a pleasure." "Mr. Cross, I wish I could say the same." His smile widened. "Direct. I like that. Verena said you had bite." "Lady Verena isn't here." "I know. That's why I came to see you instead." He gestured to the chairs. "Shall we sit?" "I'd rather stand." "Suit yourself." He didn't sit either, just stood there, studying her like she was a puzzle he was trying to solve. "I heard about your little performance the other night. Very dramatic." "It wasn't a performance, it was the truth." "Truth is subjective, my dear, and rarely as clean as you'd like it to be." "What do you want, Mr. Cross?" "The same thing I've always wanted, to protect my interests." "Your interests? You're bleeding this estate dry." "I'm collecting what I'm owed." "For what?" He tilted his head. "You really don't know, do you? Verena kept you in the dark." "Then enlighten me." Cross walked to the fireplace, ran a finger along the mantel. "Your husband's father, the late Mr. Hale, was a terrible businessman, gambled, made bad investments. By the time he died, he'd run this estate into the ground. But that's not what killed him." Mara's heart hammered. What did? Guilt, shame, fear. Take your pick. Cross turned to face her. He came to me for help. Wanted money to cover his debts. I gave it to him, but he couldn't pay me back, so we made an arrangement. A percentage of the estate's income in perpetuity until the debt was settled. That's extortion. That's business, and it's all legal. I have the contracts to prove it. If it's legal, why does Lady Verena act like you're blackmailing her? Cross's smile turned sharp. Because the contracts were signed the day before he died. And Verena knows, though she can't prove, that the stress of what he'd done is what stopped his heart. She blames me. Always has. Did you kill him? I didn't have to. He killed himself with his own poor decisions. I just happened to profit from it. Mara felt sick. You're a monster. I'm a businessman. There's a difference. Not from where I'm standing. Cross sighed like she was being tedious. Look, Mrs. Hale, I didn't come here to argue morality with you. I came to make you an offer. I'm not interested. You haven't heard it yet. I don't need to. Your little rebellion has put Lady Verena in a difficult position. Her control over this household is slipping. That's bad for her. But it's also bad for me because if this estate collapses entirely, I don't get paid. He stepped closer. So here's my offer. You help me ensure the estate stays solvent. Keep the household running, manage the finances properly. Do what Verena's been failing to do, and I'll reduce my payments, give you breathing room, maybe even help you turn this place around. In exchange for what? Your cooperation, your silence, and your agreement to keep paying me, just at a lower rate. You want me to take Lady Verena's place as your puppet? I prefer the term business partner. Mara laughed, bitter and sharp. You really think I'd agree to that? I think you're practical, and I think you're smart enough to realize you don't have many options. Verena's broken. Your husband's weak. The estate's falling apart. But you have fire, intelligence. You could actually save this place if you work with me. Or I could expose you. Tell everyone what you've done. With what proof? The contracts are legal. The payments are documented. You'll look like you're grasping at straws. And even if you did somehow discredit me, you'd still be left with a mountain of debt and no way to pay it. So really, Mrs. Hale, you only have two choices. Work with me or watch everything burn. He handed her a card. Thick paper, expensive. His name and an address. Think about it. You have 3 days. He walked out, leaving her standing there, the card heavy in her hand. She stared at it for a long time. Then she tore it in half. That night, Mara gathered everyone she trusted, Darius, Mrs. Guerin, Carrick, and even Bess, in the library. She closed the door, locked it, and told them everything. About Cross, about the contracts, about the impossible choice he'd given her. When she finished, the room was silent. Finally, Carrick spoke. He's got you cornered. I know. So what are you going to do? Mara looked at each of them in turn. I'm going to find a way out, but I can't do it alone. I need your help. Mrs. Guerin crossed her arms. Help with what, exactly? First, we need to stabilize the estate. Cut costs where we can, increase revenue where possible. Make this place functional again. That's easier said than done. I know, but it's not impossible. Mrs. Guerin, you know where the waste is, what we can cut without hurting operations. The housekeeper nodded slowly. I've got ideas. Good. Carrick, same question. What repairs are essential? What can wait? Most of it can wait if we're smart about it, but the roof on the east wing needs fixing before winter, or we'll have water damage that'll cost 10 times as much. Then we prioritize that. Darius, she turned to her husband. I need you to go through your father's papers. Every contract, every agreement, every debt. If Cross has legal claim to a percentage of the income, I want to know exactly how much and for how long. Darius looked pale but nodded. I can do that. And Bess, Mara looked at the young maid, who looked terrified to even be included in this conversation. I need you to keep your ears open. If Lady Verena or Cross say anything at all, I need to know. Yes, ma'am. This isn't going to be easy, Mara said, and it's not going to be fast. But if we work together, we can save this place, not for Lady Verena, not for Cross, for us. For the people who actually live and work here. Mrs. Guerin studied her for a long moment. You really mean that, don't you? This isn't about power for you. No, it's about survival. All right then, Mrs. Guerin stood. I'm in. Carrick stood too. Same. Bess nodded nervously. Darius was the last. He looked at Mara, something complicated in his expression. You're sure about this? No, but I'm doing it anyway. He smiled, small but real. Then I'm with you. The work started immediately. Mrs. Guerin began a ruthless audit of household expenses, cutting everything that wasn't essential. Meals became simpler. Candles were rationed. Unnecessary staff tasks were eliminated. The staff grumbled at first, but when Mrs. Guerin explained why, that it was this or watching the estate collapse entirely, they fell in line. Some even volunteered suggestions. Carrick tackled the repairs with a skeleton crew, prioritizing what would prevent bigger disasters down the line. The roof got patched. Leaks got sealed. The stables, which had been falling apart, got reinforced. Darius disappeared into his father's study and didn't emerge for 2 days. When he finally did, he looked exhausted and haunted. I found the contracts, he said, dropping a stack of papers on the table in front of Mara. Cross wasn't lying. They're legal. My father signed over 20% of the estate's annual income until the debt is repaid. At current rates, that's another 15 years. Mara's heart sank. 15 years? At least. Maybe more if the estate keeps losing money. Can we contest it? I don't know, maybe. But that would take time and money we don't have. Mara stared at the contracts, feeling the weight of them. 20%. 15 years. It was a noose around their necks. But there had to be a way out. There had to be. On the 4th day, Lady Verena finally emerged from her quarters. She looked different, thinner, older. Her hair wasn't perfectly arranged. Her dress was wrinkled. She looked, for the first time, human. She found Mara in the dining room reviewing expense reports. So this is what you've been doing, Lady Verena said. Her voice was flat, emotionless. Playing house. Mara looked up. Someone had to. You think you can run this estate better than me? I think I can run it more honestly than you. Lady Verena laughed, dry and bitter. Honestly, that's rich coming from you. I've never lied about what I'm doing. No, you've just destroyed everything I've built. Lady Verena sat down, heavily, like her legs couldn't hold her anymore. Do you have any idea what it took to keep this place running after my husband died? The sacrifices I made, the compromises? I know about Edmund Cross. You don't know anything. Then tell me. Lady Verena was silent for a long time. Then, quietly, my husband was a fool. A charming, well-meaning fool who destroyed everything he touched. When he died, he left me with nothing but debt and scandal. Cross came to me with those contracts and said if I didn't pay, he'd ruin us, publicly, completely. So I paid, and I kept paying. And I did whatever I had to do to keep this family's name intact. By controlling everyone around you. By surviving. Lady Verena looked at her with tired eyes. You think I enjoyed it? Being the villain? I did what needed to be done. You could have asked for help. From who? Darius? He was barely 20 when his father died. He couldn't handle it. I had to be strong for both of us. You were cruel. I was strong. There's a difference. Mara shook her head. No, you were scared, and you made everyone else scared too. That's not strength. That's just pain passing itself along. Lady Verena's face crumpled just for a second. Then she pulled herself together, stood, smoothed her dress. It doesn't matter now. You've won. The house is yours. I hope you're happy. She walked out. Mara sat there feeling no triumph, no satisfaction, just exhaustion. Over the next week, things began to shift. Small changes at first, barely noticeable, but they added up. The kitchen ran more efficiently. Meals cost less but tasted better because Patrice actually had time to cook instead of rushing. Mrs. Guerin stopped yelling at the staff, and they stopped making mistakes out of fear. The repairs got done. Slowly, painstakingly, but they got done. And the house started to look less like it was dying. The staff, cautiously, tentatively, started smiling. Mara was in the gardens one afternoon checking on Carrick's work when Bess found her. Mrs. Hale? There are people here. What people? From the dinner party, Lord Ashford and some others. Mara's stomach dropped. What do they want? They asked to see you, not Lady Verena, you. Mara followed Bess back to the house, her mind racing. This could be disaster. They could be here to confront her, to side with Lady Verena, to make everything worse. She walked into the drawing room and found 5 of the guests from the disastrous dinner party waiting. Lord Ashford, Lady Pembroke, the Thorntons, Lord Crest. They all stood when she entered. Mrs. Hale, Lord Ashford said, thank you for seeing us. I wasn't aware I had a choice. You do. We're not here to make demands. We're here to... He glanced at the others. Well, to apologize. Mara blinked. Apologize? Lady Pembroke stepped forward. She was older, gray-haired, with kind eyes. After the dinner, we started asking questions. About the estate, about Lady Verena, about the things you said. And we found out you were telling the truth, all of it. The debts, the mismanagement, everything. Lord Ashford cleared his throat. We've known Verena for years, respected her. But we were blind to what was really happening, and for that, we owe you an apology. We also owe you our support, Lady Pembroke added, if you'll accept it. Mara felt tears prick her eyes. She blinked them back. What kind of support? Practical support, Lord Crest said. He was younger, sharp-featured. I have connections with creditors. I can help renegotiate some of the estate's debts. Get you better terms. I have supplies you need, Mrs. Thornton offered. Fabric, tools, things that have been sitting in my warehouses unused. You can have them at cost. And I, Lord Ashford said, will make sure everyone knows that the Hale estate is under new management, competent management. That should help with your reputation. Stop some of the gossip. Mara stared at them, overwhelmed. Why would you do this? Lady Pembroke smiled. Because what you did took courage, and because we're tired of watching good people get crushed by bad situations. If you're trying to fix this place, the least we can do is help. I don't know what to say. Say yes. Mara laughed, surprised by the sound. Yes, thank you, yes. They stayed for an hour, going over details, making plans. By the time they left, Mara had commitments for reduced debt payments, supplies, and social support. It wasn't enough to solve everything, but it was a start. That night she found Darius in the study. He was staring at the account books, looking lost. We might actually survive this, she said. He looked up, surprised. You think so? I do. The neighbors are helping. The staff is on board. The repairs are getting done. We're still in debt, but it's manageable now, if we're careful. Darius leaned back in his chair, something like hope flickering across his face. I can't believe it. Neither can I. You did this. You know that, right? None of this would have happened if you hadn't... He stopped, shook his head. I would have just kept going along with everything, let it all fall apart. But you didn't. I didn't have a choice. Yes, you did. You could have left, run away, saved yourself. But you stayed, and you fought. And now... He gestured at the papers, the evidence of progress. Now we have a chance. Mara sat down across from him. We still have to deal with Cross. I know. And your mother. I know. And about 100 other problems I haven't even thought of yet. I know, he smiled. But for tonight, can we just pretend we've won? Mara smiled back. Yeah, we can do that. They sat there in the quiet study, surrounded by papers and possibilities, and for the first time since Mara had arrived at Thornwick Manor, she felt something she hadn't felt in months. Hope. The next morning, Edmund Cross returned. Mara was ready for him this time. She met him in the drawing room, flanked by Darius and Lord Crest, who'd stayed overnight specifically for this meeting. Cross raised an eyebrow when he saw the setup. Bringing reinforcements, Mrs. Hale? Insurance. How prudent. He sat without being invited. I assume this means you've made a decision. I have. I'm not accepting your offer. Pity. I thought you were smarter than that. I am smart. That's why I'm refusing. Cross smiled, indulgent. And how exactly do you plan to pay off your debts without my cooperation? By running this estate properly, by cutting costs, by making it profitable again. Ambitious, but ultimately futile. The contracts stand. 20% of your income is mine. Nothing you do will change that. Actually, Lord Crest said, speaking for the first time, there might be something. Cross turned to him, irritated. And you are? Lord Michael Crest, attorney, and I've been reviewing the contracts you hold. They're airtight. They're legal, yes, but there's an interesting clause in the repayment terms. The debt is calculated as a percentage of net income, not gross. Correct. Which means if the estate operates at a loss, you get nothing. Cross's smile faltered. The estate won't operate at a loss. It did for the past 3 years, I checked. Lady Verena was hiding it with creative accounting, but the numbers don't lie. And if Mrs. Hale restructures things properly, cuts costs, eliminates waste, she can keep the estate profitable enough to function, but not profitable enough to owe you anything significant. You'd get pennies on the dollar, maybe nothing at all if she's careful. Cross's face went hard. That's manipulation. That's good business. Your words, not mine. Mara leaned forward. Here's my offer, Mr. Cross. I'll honor the contracts. I won't contest them. But I'll also run this estate the way I see fit. And if that means you get less money, that's not my problem. You can take what I give you, or you can take us to court and spend years fighting for scraps. Your choice. Cross stared at her, fury and calculation warring in his eyes. Finally, he stood. You're making a mistake. Maybe, but it's my mistake to make. He left without another word. Darius let out a breath he'd been holding. That was terrifying, Mara finished. I was going to say impressive. Lord Crest smiled. He'll be back. Men like that don't give up easily. But you bought yourself time. Use it wisely. I will. After Lord Crest left, Mara and Darius stood in the drawing room, the morning sun streaming through the windows. We really did it, Darius said quietly. We actually stood up to him. We did. What happens now? Now we keep going. We fix this place. We pay off the debts. We prove that we can do this. Darius looked at her, something new in his expression. Respect, admiration, maybe even affection. I'm sorry, he said suddenly. For what? For not believing in you sooner, for letting my mother treat you the way she did, for being too weak to help. You're helping now. That's what matters. Still, I'm sorry. Mara reached out, took his hand. He looked surprised, but he didn't pull away. We're going to be okay, she said. You really believe that? I have to. He squeezed her hand. Then I'll believe it too. That afternoon, word spread through the house. The staff gathered in the kitchen, nervous and hopeful, waiting to hear what happened. Mara stood in the doorway, looking at their faces. Mrs. Guerin, Patrice, Bess, Carrick, the stable boys, the maids, all of them watching her. Cross is gone, she said simply, for now, and we're going to keep this place running, together. A pause. Then Carrick started clapping, slow at first, then faster. Others joined in. Within seconds, the whole kitchen was applauding. Mara felt her throat tighten. She nodded, unable to speak, and left before they could see her cry. She found a quiet corner of the garden and let herself break down. Just for a minute. Just long enough to release the fear and exhaustion and impossible weight she'd been carrying. When she finally pulled herself together and headed back inside, she found Lady Verena standing in the hallway. They hadn't spoken since their last conversation. Congratulations, Lady Verena said. Her voice was empty. You won. This wasn't about winning, wasn't it? Mara looked at her, really looked at her, and saw not the monster she'd been fighting, but a tired, broken woman who'd spent 30 years drowning and didn't know how to ask for help. You could stay, Mara said quietly. Help us rebuild. Be part of this. Lady Verena laughed, soft and sad. You don't want that. I don't know what I want, but I know this house has enough room for both of us. If you're willing to change. Lady Verena studied her for a long moment. Then she shook her head. I wouldn't know how. She walked away. Mara watched her go, feeling something that might have been pity. That evening, Mara stood in the study with Darius, looking at the estate map spread across the desk. The South Fields, Darius said, pointing. We could lease them, generate income without having to work them ourselves. Good idea. What about the old mill? Needs repairs, but it could be functional again. They talked for hours, planning, strategizing, building something neither of them had thought possible a month ago. A partnership. a future. When they finally stopped, exhausted and hopeful, Darius looked at her and said, "Thank you." "For what?" "For not giving up on this place. On me." Mara smiled. "You're welcome." He hesitated, then leaned forward and kissed her forehead. Brief, gentle. When he pulled back, he looked almost embarrassed. I should go." "Darius?" He stopped. "You're a good man. You just forgot for a while." He smiled, sad but real. "I'm trying to remember." "That's enough." He left. Mara stood alone in the study, looking at the maps, the plans, the future they were building. For the first time since she'd arrived at Thornwick Manor, she felt like she belonged. Not because she'd been accepted, but because she'd fought for it and won. The months that followed were hard in ways Mara hadn't anticipated. Not the dramatic kind of hard. No more dinner party explosions or midnight confrontations. Just the slow, grinding work of keeping a dying estate alive. She woke before dawn most days, went to bed after midnight, and spent the hours in between doing things she'd never imagined herself doing. Negotiating with tradesmen, reviewing crop yields with tenant farmers, learning the difference between good livestock and bad. Her hands got rough. Her dresses got worn. She stopped caring what she looked like and started caring whether the numbers added up. Darius worked alongside her, though he was still finding his footing. He'd spent so long following orders that making decisions paralyzed him. But he was learning, slowly, messily, but learning. Lady Verena stayed in her quarters most days. When she did emerge, she moved through the house like a ghost, present but not participating. Mara tried to include her in decisions at first, but Verena just waved her away. "Do what you want. It's your house now." It wasn't triumphant, it was just sad. By early spring, the changes were visible. The roof no longer leaked. The gardens, under Carrick's careful management, started showing green. The kitchen ran smoothly. Bills got paid on time, not all of them, but enough to keep creditors from circling. And then Edmund Cross came back. He arrived unannounced one afternoon, stepping out of an expensive carriage like he owned the place. Mara was in the courtyard when he pulled up, her sleeves rolled to her elbows, dirt under her fingernails from helping Carrick transplant some hedges. Cross looked at her and smiled, condescending, amused. My, playing in the dirt now, Mrs. Hale?" "Working. There's a difference." "Is there?" He brushed past her, headed for the house. "I'm here to collect." "You know where the study is?" He did. By the time Mara washed up and joined him, he was already seated behind the desk, her desk, going through the account books like he had every right. "Interesting," he said without looking up. "Your expenses are down significantly." "We cut waste." "Yes, I see that. Very frugal. Very clever." He closed the ledger, looked at her with those cold eyes. "Also very transparent. You're deliberately keeping profits low to minimize my payments." "I'm keeping the estate functional. If that means lower profits, so be it. We had an agreement." "No. Your agreement was with a dead man. I'm just honoring the legal minimum." Cross stood, walked around the desk. He moved into her space, close enough to be threatening without touching her. "You think you're clever, don't you? Think you've outmaneuvered me?" "I think I'm doing what I have to do." "Let me tell you something about people like you, Mrs. Hale. You think survival is enough. That if you just work hard enough, things will turn out fine. But the world doesn't work that way. People like me, we don't survive. We win, and I always win." "Not this time." His smile turned sharp. "We'll see." He left without collecting a single penny, because there were none to collect. The estate had operated at exactly break-even for the quarter. On paper, there was no profit, nothing for him to claim. It was legal, barely, and it wouldn't work forever. But it bought them time. That evening, Mara found Darius in the stables, brushing down his horse with more force than necessary. "He's going to retaliate," Darius said without looking up. "Cross doesn't take losses well." "I know. So what do we do?" "We keep going. We make this place profitable enough to survive, but lean enough that he can't bleed us dry. We walk the line." "For how long?" "I don't know. 15 years according to the contract. Unless we can pay off the debt early." Darius laughed, bitter. "With what money?" "I'm working on it." He finally looked at her. "You're always working on it. Don't you ever get tired?" Every single day. Then why don't you stop? Because if I stop, we lose. And I'm not ready to lose yet. He set down the brush, stepped closer. They were inches apart now, close enough that she could see the exhaustion in his eyes that probably matched her own. I don't deserve you, he said quietly. Probably not. He smiled, small but real. Then he kissed her. Not on the forehead this time. A real kiss. Tentative and uncertain, and surprisingly gentle. When he pulled back, Mara felt her heart hammering. I should have done that months ago, he said. You should have done a lot of things months ago. I'm trying to do better. I know. They stood there in the dim stable, surrounded by the smell of hay and horses, and for a moment everything else fell away. Then a voice from the doorway shattered it. How touching. Lady Verena stood there, wrapped in a shawl, looking thinner than Mara had ever seen her. Darius stepped back immediately, like a child caught doing something wrong. Mother, don't. I'm not here to scold you. She looked at Mara. I'm here to talk to her. Darius glanced between them, uncertain. Go, Verena said. This doesn't concern you. He hesitated, then left. Mara and Verena stood alone in the stable, the silence heavy and awkward. Finally, Verena spoke. You're doing well. Better than I ever did. Thank you. That wasn't a compliment, it was an observation. All right. Verena stepped further into the stable, running her hand along a stall door. I've been thinking about what you said, about staying, helping. Mara's breath caught. And I think I was wrong. To walk away. To give up. Verena looked at her, and for the first time there was something vulnerable in her expression. I don't know how to not be in control. I don't know how to be part of something without running it, but I'd like to try, if you'll let me. Mara studied her, this woman who'd made her life hell, who'd starved her and humiliated her and tried to break her. She should say no, should tell her to leave, should protect herself from more pain. But Mara had learned something in the past months, that people weren't simple, that cruelty often came from fear, that redemption was possible, even if it was hard. I'll let you try, Mara said carefully. But things are different now. I'm in charge. Darius is in charge. You're welcome to contribute, but you don't get to take over. Can you live with that? Verena was quiet for a long time. Then she nodded. I'll try. That's all I'm asking. They didn't hug, didn't have some tearful reconciliation, but something shifted between them. A crack in the wall. Not friendship, but maybe the beginning of understanding. Over the next few weeks, Verena started participating. Slowly. Awkwardly. She offered advice on dealing with certain neighbors. Advice that was actually useful. She helped Mrs. Guerin reorganize the linen storage in a way that made more sense. She even apologized to Bess for years of harsh treatment. It wasn't perfect. Verena still snapped sometimes, still fell back into old patterns. But she was trying, and that was something. The real breakthrough came in early summer. Mara was in the study, going over the accounts for what felt like the 1,000th time, when Verena walked in with a stack of papers. What's this? Mara asked. Contracts. From my husband's time. I found them in storage. What kind of contracts? Mineral rights. On the northern boundary of the estate. He signed them over years ago for a pittance, never developed them. But I did some research. There's a mining company expanding operations in this region. They might be interested. Mara's heart started racing. How much are we talking? If we negotiate well, enough to make a serious dent in the debt. Maybe even pay off Cross entirely within a few years instead of 15. Mara stared at the papers, then at Verena. Why are you giving me this? Because you were right. This isn't just my house. It's ours. All of ours. And if we're going to survive, we need to do it together. Mara felt tears prick her eyes. Thank you. Verena nodded stiffly. Don't make me regret it. The negotiations with the mining company took months. They were brutal, full of setbacks and compromises and moments where Mara thought the whole thing would fall apart. But she had help now. Verena, who knew how to play hardball. Darius, who understood the legal aspects. Lord Crest, who provided counsel. By autumn, they had a deal. A substantial upfront payment, plus royalties on anything extracted. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough. Enough to pay off a significant chunk of the debt. Enough to give the estate breathing room. Enough to make Cross's hold over them shrink from a noose to a nuisance. The day the payment came through, Mara gathered everyone in the drawing room, the staff, Darius, Verena, even some of the tenant farmers who'd stuck with them through the hard times. "We did it," Mara said simply. "We survived." The room erupted, people hugging, crying, laughing. Mrs. Guerin actually cracked a smile. Carrick shook Darius's hand so hard it looked painful. Bess cried into her apron. Mara stood in the middle of it all, overwhelmed and exhausted and impossibly grateful. Darius found her in the chaos, pulled her aside. "You did this," he said. "You saved us." "We saved us. All of us." He shook his head. "No, you led. You fought. You refused to give up when everyone else would have, including me." "Darius, I love you," he said suddenly. "I don't know when it happened. Probably somewhere between you calling out my mother at dinner and you digging in the gardens with dirt on your face. But I do. I love you." Mara felt her throat tighten. "You don't have to say that just because... I'm not saying it because of anything. I'm saying it because it's true. And because I should have said it months ago." She looked at him, really looked at him, and saw not the distant, cold man she'd married, but someone who'd grown, who'd changed, who'd become a partner. "I love you too," she said, "even though you're still figuring things out." "Still? You forgot to sign the grain contract last week." He laughed. "Fair." They kissed, and this time it felt different. Not tentative or uncertain, like they were choosing each other, really choosing. Edmund Cross showed up one last time in early winter. Mara was ready for him. She met him in the study with Darius at her side and Lord Crest on standby. The account books were open, showing the estate's new financial position. Cross took one look and his face went carefully blank. "You found money?" "We did." "From where?" "That's not your concern. What is your concern is that we're prepared to make you an offer. We'll pay off the remaining debt in full, right now. In exchange, you walk away, permanently. No more payments, no more claims. You're done." Cross studied the numbers. "This is half of what I'm owed over the full term of the contract." "Yes, but it's money now, guaranteed, versus 15 years of maybe getting pennies on the dollar. Your choice." He was quiet for a long time. Then he smiled, small and cold. "You've learned well, Mrs. Hale." "I had good teachers. Most of them taught me what not to do." Cross laughed. Actually laughed. "All right, you win. I'll take your offer." Lord Crest produced the papers. Cross signed them. Money exchanged hands. Well, promissory notes, but same thing. And just like that, it was over. Cross stood, gathered his things. At the door, he paused. "For what it's worth, you would have made a formidable business partner." "I'd rather be a formidable enemy," he smiled. "You already are." He left. Mara exhaled hard, like she'd been holding her breath for months. Maybe she had been. Darius wrapped his arms around her from behind, rested his chin on her shoulder. "It's really over. It's really over." "What do we do now?" "Now?" Mara looked around the study, at the books, the maps, the evidence of everything they'd built. "Now we live." The winter that followed was the first peaceful season Mara had known at Thornwick Manor. There were still problems, there always were, but they were manageable, normal. The kind of problems that didn't threaten to destroy everything. The estate stabilized. Not wealthy, but functional, sustainable. The staff stayed, the tenants stayed. The house stopped feeling like a mausoleum and started feeling like a home. Verena found her place eventually, not as the matriarch, but as an advisor. Someone who contributed without controlling. It took time. There were setbacks. But slowly she became someone Mara could work with. Almost respect. One evening in early spring, a year after everything had started, Mara stood in the gardens watching the sunset. The hedges Carrick had transplanted were blooming. The grounds looked alive again. Darius came up beside her, slipped his hand into hers. "What are you thinking about?" "About how different everything is." "Better?" "Yes, but also harder than I thought." "Life generally is," she smiled. "When did you get philosophical?" "When I married a woman who refuses to give up on anything, even me." They stood there in the fading light, And Mara thought about the girl who'd arrived at this place a year ago. Scared. Alone. Convinced she was powerless. She'd been wrong. Power wasn't given. It was taken. Built. Earned through every small choice, every act of defiance, every refusal to break. She wasn't that scared girl anymore. She was something else now. Something stronger. Not because she'd won some grand victory, but because she'd survived 1,000 small battles and come out standing. "I'm proud of you," Darius said quietly. "I'm proud of me too." He laughed. "Good. You should be." A few weeks later, Mara discovered she was pregnant. She told Darius first in the study where so much of their battle had been fought. He stared at her, stunned. "You're sure?" "I'm sure." He sat down heavily. "I'm going to be a father. Are you okay with that?" "I don't know. Maybe. Ask me again in 9 months." He looked up at her, eyes bright. "Are you scared?" "Terrified." "Me too." "Good. We can be terrified together." They told Verena that evening. She didn't cry. Mara wasn't sure the woman was capable of it, but her eyes got suspiciously bright. "A grandchild," she said softly. "I never thought—" She stopped herself. "You'll be good parents, both of you." "We'll try," Mara said. "That's all anyone can do." The months passed. Mara's body changed. The estate continued to function. Life went on. And then, one cold morning in late autumn, Mara went into labor. It was long, painful, terrifying. Darius held her hand through all of it, looking more scared than she'd ever seen him. When the baby finally came, a girl, small and loud and perfect, Mara held her and felt something shift inside her chest. This was what she'd been fighting for. Not just survival, not just the estate, a future. "What should we name her?" Darius asked, staring at his daughter with wonder. Mara thought for a moment, then smiled. "Hope. We'll name her Hope. Because that's what she was, what she represented. Proof that even in the darkest places, even when everything seemed lost, new life could take root and grow." The years that followed weren't easy. Raising a child never was. Running an estate never was. But they were good years, full years. The kind of life Mara had never imagined she'd have. Hope grew up wild and stubborn, with her father's eyes and her mother's refusal to back down. She ran through the gardens, drove the staff crazy, and loved the estate fiercely. Verena softened with age, became a doting grandmother in a way she'd never been a loving mother. She and Mara never became close, exactly, but they reached an understanding, a respect. Darius grew into the kind of man Mara had always known he could be. Strong without being cruel. Decisive without being controlling. A partner in every sense. And Mara became the woman she'd needed to be all along. Not perfect, not unbreakable, but resilient, unyielding. Someone who'd walk through fire and come out forged instead of destroyed. One evening, years later, Mara stood in the same spot where she'd first arrived. The courtyard, the cold stone, the manor looming above. It didn't look forbidding anymore. Just looked like home. Hope was playing nearby, chasing something only she could see. Darius was laughing, trying to catch her. Verena watched from the doorway, a rare smile on her face. Mara thought about the girl she'd been, the bride trapped in a cold household, the woman who'd had to fight for every inch of ground. She'd survived, more than survived. She'd transformed the very thing that tried to break her, and she'd built something worth keeping. "Mama," Hope called, "watch this!" Mara watched, smiled, lived, because in the end that's what strength was. Not loud declarations or dramatic victories, just the quiet, relentless act of showing up, of refusing to disappear, of carving out space in a world that didn't want to make room. Mara had done that, and she'd keep doing it, for as long as it took, for as long as she lived, because she was no longer the woman who'd arrived at Thornwick Manor all those years ago hoping someone would save her. She was the woman who'd saved herself, and that made all the difference. The sun set over the estate, painting everything gold. Hope's laughter echoed across the courtyard. Darius called for Mara to come inside. She took one last look at the manor, her manor now, and smiled. Then she turned and walked toward her family, toward her life, toward the future she'd fought so hard to build. And she didn't look back.